He disappeared in 2001. His family believed he was dead, but 18 years later, he appeared on a police cruiser's camera. The problem? That car wasn't used that day. A quiet back street sits behind a warehouse, lights low, air damp. The cruiser is parked with everything off. The camera feed shows only fence and fog, a dull gray frame. Then a face leans into view at the passenger window, pale, unshaven, eyes that look both alert and lost. He doesn't speak. He studies the lens as if he knows it is there. The stare holds for what feels like half a minute. Then he steps back, and the fog swallows him. The time label is clean. The system lists no driver. The city map shows the unit at rest. Still, the clip sits on the console with the plate number stamped across it. An officer pauses the frame and whispers a name the station hasn't said in years. Daniel Ward. The match to the old poster above the break room table is hard to deny. By morning, the clip is looping in a small room that smells like coffee and paper. Chairs scrape. No one talks much. They stop the video again and again, tracing the brow, the chipped front tooth, the way the left eye narrows when he concentrates. Ellen Ward is called in. She stands close to the screen, breath steady, and taps the scar above his right eye. "That's my son," she says. No drama, just fact. Someone suggests a prank. Another shrugs. The cruiser never left the lot, not on paper. A soft tap is heard on the recording, like a ring touching glass. Daniel wore one the night he vanished. The room goes quiet. The captain keeps the clip off public channels and tells a small team to move. Detective Hale takes 2 printed stills, a basic kit, and heads to the warehouse road. He repeats the same simple thought in his head. If the face is real, then the trail is warm. And if it is warm, they cannot waste the day. Hale and Priya reach the warehouse road just after first light. The street is damp, the air cool, the fence cold to the touch. A guard at the loading bay says he heard a light click on glass and nothing more. On a delivery van by the curb, Priya finds a small clear oval where breath might have wiped the film, with a faint streak beside it at the height of a face. No print shows. Wind has eaten the edges. The shop across the way has a wide front window. In the morning haze, it holds a shallow ghost of a face at the same level, like someone leaned close to check their reflection and moved on. A short gray thread hangs from a fence tie and snaps free when Hale bags it. No theories, just a thin line of touch points in a tight circle. He stands where the camera would see and leans in as the stranger did. The street feels too quiet, like someone is close and waiting. Hale marks a path toward the service lane and radios that they are following a slow trail on foot. Back at the station, Ellen watches the still again and points at the brow. "He taps glass when he thinks," she says. "It makes a tiny ring." Maya keeps the summary plain. The cruiser stayed parked. The camera woke for a breath. The cabin mic caught a single tap. Then silence. The captain fixes a small team and sends the rest back to routine. Hale calls in with the breath mark, the streak, the thread. No claims, only small facts that line up with a man who paused, looked in, and left on foot. The phone on the wall rings. A shop owner from the corner says a man stood at the van window before dawn, hands in pockets, face close, then walked toward the canal path without looking back. Hale and Priya head that way. The lane is narrow and quiet, bordered by thin trees and wet brick. A bird scatters. On the rail sits a coin with a fresh nick. Hale pockets it, more out of habit than faith, and keeps moving, eyes on the curve where the path bends out of sight. Hale and Priya follow the canal path at an even pace, eyes on the slick bricks and the thin band of water that curves around the bend. A jogger slows when he sees their badges and says a man stood by the rail before dawn, hands in pockets, head tipped as if listening to something only he could hear. The man moved like he knew the ground, not like a stranger, and took the bend without looking back. At a fork, one branch goes under a low bridge toward the bus yard. The other climbs toward a row of shuttered lockups. Priya rubs the stone with her glove and finds a faint smudge where a heel dragged and pushed off toward the bridge. On the rail, a thin crescent mark suggests a coin tapped the metal. Hale bags a coin from the ledge and notes, "Someone paused here, thought, and chose the lower path." They move in silence, pacing the scuffed edge, asking if anyone saw a man with tired eyes and a slow, careful step. Under the bridge, the air turns cool and hollow and the water sounds steady, a soft beat that does not stop. Beyond the bridge, the path meets a quiet lane where buses sleep behind a wire gate. A maintenance man waves them over. He says a man came from the canal near sunrise, shoes wet, jaw tight, eyes on the ground as if counting steps. The man asked in a low voice where the nearest station was. The worker pointed toward the main road. When he looked up again, the man was moving away, steady and sure, like he had finally picked a direction. Hale shows the still from the clip. The worker nods once and taps the brow in the photo. "Him," he says, and adds that he did not ask a name. Priya traces the route toward the road and finds damp marks that fade as the pavement dries. The city wakes. Shutters lift, radios hum. A kettle whistles behind a thin door. At the corner, a small grocery opens early. The owner remembers a quiet man who bought water and a sandwich and paid with coins he counted twice. He left the change on the tray as if he did not want to touch more than he had to. Hale shows the grocer the still. The man studies it, nods once, and says the quiet customer kept his head low and counted coins with a careful thumb. He drank water in 2 slow pulls, tapped the bottle lip with a ring, then asked which way to the old South Station. He left the change on the tray, like he did not want to carry more weight than needed, and stepped into the gray light. Outside, Priya finds the bottle in the bin, label peeled into neat strips. A habit, not a message. Hale calls in a simple update for the captain and asks Ellen to stay close to her phone. She does not ask for hope. She asks for accuracy. "He keeps moving when he is scared," she says, voice level. He chooses places he already knows. Hale looks down the road toward the station, past shuttered shops and a bleached billboard, and feels the line of the day pulling them forward. If the man from the clip is real, he is not hiding. He is rehearsing a route he once walked without thinking. The South Station sits low behind a row of trees, a quiet place with chipped paint and a clock that runs fast. An attendant in a faded vest remembers a man who kept to the back bench, hands folded, eyes on the floor. He studied the route map without touching it, then asked if the line still stopped at Brook Hollow. The name lands with weight. Ellen once mentioned the field behind Daniel's old school, a stretch he loved, a place he ran when the world felt loud. The attendant says the man did not buy a ticket. He stood, smoothed his shirt as if meeting someone, and walked out the side door toward the bus stands. Priya checks the bench and finds a square of paper pressed flat under a slat. A wrapper folded into a careful triangle. Not a note, just order. Hale thanks the attendant, steps into the yard and draws a straight path toward the route that leads to that field, the past pressing close as weather. Hale and Priya follow the bus route on foot, cutting across side streets toward Brook Hollow. The city thins to low houses and a school field beyond a chain-link fence. At a stop near the yard, a driver in an orange vest says a quiet man waited on the edge of the crowd before sunrise, then chose to walk instead of board. He kept a hand near his face as if shielding from glare and tapped a ring once on the rail when the bus hissed. The driver points toward a service alley that runs beside the line. Ellen calls when Hale checks in. Her voice does not shake. She says the field gate has a chain that sticks and only opens when you twist left, a trick Daniel learned as a kid. Hale reaches the gate and tries it. The chain turns left and gives with a tired scrape. On the metal, he finds 2 small nicks close together, fresh and bright. Priya notes the dirt inside the hinge has a clean arc, like someone opened it recently. No note, no mark. Only a path that seems to be setting itself, one careful step at a time. Brook Hollow stretches wide and quiet, grass still wet, the old bleachers leaning toward the track. A groundskeeper unlocks a shed and says a man stood by the fence before the kids arrived, not hiding, just holding the wire and looking toward the far goal. He asked if the school still let people cut across to the creek path. When told yes, he thanked him with a small nod and stepped away. On the lowest bleacher, Priya finds a drink lid pressed flat under a seat, edges turned in until it forms a neat triangle. The same habit, the same need to make order. Ellen arrives and stops by the bench. She whispers that Daniel used to count the steps from here to the creek, out loud, then in his head. Hale listens and tries her pace. At the fence post nearest the corner, he spots a faint smudge at temple height and a tiny scrape on the cap where metal meets metal, as if a ring tapped at once. The creek path bends behind brush. The morning has given them a line to follow. Hale, Priya, and Ellen take the creek path where the brush leans in and the ground softens underfoot. The air smells of wet leaves and iron. A dog walker pauses and says a quiet man stood on the footbridge at first light, hands in pockets, head bowed like he was counting. He did not cross when the joggers came. He waited, then moved on alone toward the culvert. On the bridge rail, Hale finds two tiny nicks side by side, bright and new, as if a ring tapped twice. A candy wrapper sits on the beam, folded into a neat triangle with edges sharp, the same habit from the benches and the yard. Ellen breathes out and says, Daniel folded corners when he could not settle his mind. She points ahead, to a slope that rises toward an old underpass. A smear on the post sits at temple height. The brush is bent where a shoulder slid by. No note, no sign. Only a careful path shaped by small choices that all point forward. They reach the underpass where sound gathers and every step echoes. Chalk dust frets the wall in faint lines from school kids, names and arrows layered over each other. A fresh line cuts clean across the clutter, not a message, just one straight stroke from eye level to the edge, the kind a restless hand might draw without thinking. A bottle cap lies near the base, pressed flat and creased to a tidy wedge. Priya kneels and listens. Water ticks in the dark. Farther on, a light opens to a service road and a small park with old swings. A grounds sign lists rules no one reads. A man at the far bench tells them someone sat there before sunup, hands folded, eyes on the swings, then stood when a child's bike rattled past and took the path that circles the lake. Ellen whispers that Daniel liked the far side where the trees thin. Hale nods and sets their pace to match a cautious, steady walk. Hale, Priya, and Ellen take the outer curve of the lake where the trees thin and the ground turns to packed dirt. A man on a morning walk says someone stood at the water's edge before sunrise, not hiding, just fixed on the far bank. He touched the rail with a knuckle, twice, then stepped away. On the railing, Hale spots two bright dings close together at temple height. A paper straw wrapper sits near a post, folded into a small, clean triangle. The path narrows past a cluster of reeds and a wooden footbridge that lists to one side. Someone wiped the dust on the top board in a single long stroke, like clearing a view. Ellen stops and points. As a boy, Daniel counted the flat stones that lead from this bridge to the service lane, whispering numbers until his breath evened. She lifts a hand and listens. Far across the water, a figure passes between two birches, the posture spare and careful, the pace steady, as if repeating a route in his head. A faint ripple widens, then settles, a small sound like a cue to move. They take the trail around the shore toward the birches. The figure is gone when they reach the gap. but the brush still holds the slide of a shoulder and a thin thread of lint caught on a twig. On the rail sits a water ticket stub folded to a tight wedge, edges crisp. Ellen stands a step back and says his name once, soft and level. The trees answer with a dry rustle. A boy on a bike brakes beside them and points toward the service stairs. He saw a man take the steps slowly, hand on the rail, like counting. The man asked if the small police office by the bus stands still opened in the mornings. The boy said yes, and the man thanked him without a smile. Hale looks at Ellen. She says Daniel trusted places with rules when he was lost. They follow the stairs to the street and the glass front of the old substation. The blinds hang crooked. A ring mark dots the handle. The door is locked, but the air carries a calm, recent quiet, like after a visit. On the step, a square of dust is missing where someone sat and waited. Hale tries the substation door again. This time, a clerk unlocks it and blinks at their badges. The lobby is small, quiet. A pot of stale coffee on a warmer. The clerk says a man came just after opening, stood at the counter without leaning, and asked how to leave information without giving a name. He spoke softly, clear, like each word was weighed. He asked if lost items ever make their way back to families. The clerk pointed to a box by the door. The man thanked him, touched the handle once with a ring, then folded a receipt into a neat triangle and set it on the box lid. No note, no number, just the fold. The clerk nods at the glass. He looked like he knew the place from before, he says. Outside, Hale finds the box. On the lid sits the triangle, edges sharp, and beneath it a coin with a nick on one side, the same crescent from the rail. Ellen studies the fold, then turns her head toward the bus stands. He is not hiding, she says. He is checking doors he used to trust. They cross to the stands as the first rush thins. Engines cough, brakes sigh, voices fade. Near the far bay, a man stands with hands in his pockets and head angled, watching the flow. Ellen slows, lifts a hand, and says his name once, steady and low. The man turns, not startled, eyes moving from Hale to Priya, then to Ellen, and he stays there. He taps his ring once on the rail, a small, familiar click. Mom, he says, like testing a word he remembers but has not used in years. No one breathes. He looks past her shoulder at the street as if counting turns, then back. I kept the route, he adds. Ellen does not rush him. She takes one step, stops, and opens her hands. We can walk, she says. He nods but does not move, as if a rule is holding him in place. Hale steps to the side, slow, showing space and calm. The man studies the gap, measures it, and shifts his weight, the first clear sign that the line of the day is finally bending toward them. Hale eases the space wider with a step. Daniel measures it and nods. Ellen suggests a bench by the far bay. They walk together, slow and even. Daniel keeps a hand near the rail, tapping once when voices rise, like a metronome he trusts. He asks if he is in trouble. Hale says no. We just want to walk with you, he says. Daniel studies Ellen's face as if matching it to a picture he kept in his head. I kept the route, he repeats, quiet. Field, creek, station. Doors with rules. He glances toward the street. The car by the warehouse had a small light on, he says. I looked to see if it still watched. That is all. Ellen asks if anyone is following him. He shakes his head. Not today. He adds, after a pause, that he left something where the water narrows under the road, tucked in the dark lip of the culvert. For when I forget, he says, I put things where the day can find them again. Hale asks if they can go there now. Daniel nods once, ready but wary of crowds. No hospital, he adds. Not yet, just the path. They keep to side streets back toward the creek. Daniel walks between Ellen and Priya, steady, eyes on the ground when traffic swells. At the culvert, he points to a ledge shaded by weeds. Hale kneels and reaches under the lip. His fingers touch a small tin, cool and dented. Inside are folded scraps, a ticket stub, a corner from a photo print, a short pencil line on a torn receipt, a key wrapped in tape, and a note with 3 words in a careful hand: "Keep the doors." Ellen holds the photo corner to the light. It shows part of a shoulder in a school jersey. The color faded. Daniel says he saved pieces that proved he was still himself. "If I lose a day, the tin reminds me where to stand," he says. Hale turns the key in his palm. Daniel says it opens a locker at the South Station, the old kind with a coin slot. He put it there years ago and never went back. He looks at Ellen. "If we go quiet," he says. "No crowd, no names on a loud desk." Hale agrees. They set off, the tin sealed, the key warm in his hand. The South Station's locker alcove sits in a quiet corner behind a row of dull doors. Daniel stops at one in the middle and sets the key into the slot with care. The door swings open on a tin box, a folded shirt, and a small notebook wrapped in a rubber band. Inside the tin are coins, a bus token, and a ring of tape around a short key. The notebook holds short lists written in a steady hand. Places with rules, doors that open, benches to wait, words to use when tired. A folded map shows a thin line from the warehouse road to the field, then the creek, then the station, each spot marked with a small triangle. At the back sits a photo corner with a sliver of a jersey, the same as in the culvert tin. No names, no dates, just anchors. Daniel says the spare key is for a locker at the library, a calm place with light and a desk. Ellen touches the shirt and breathes once. "You stayed ready," she says. Daniel nods. "So I could return by steps," he answers, eyes on the map he drew for himself. They take a bench by a window where the station noise is a soft hum. Daniel keeps his hands folded and speaks plain. Years ago he left after a hard night, took a ride he should not have taken, and woke in a room that was not his. He worked days that paid in cash, kept off lists, learned routes that felt safe. When a place grew loud, he moved on. He kept the ring, the habit of tapping, and the rule to stand near doors with clear signs. "Names made trouble," he says. "Rules kept me steady." Ellen listens without pushing. Hale asks why the cruiser. Daniel says the car meant order. "If it watches, it remembers," he says. "I wanted a record without a crowd." He adds that no one sent him. No one chased him that morning. He walked his old line to see if it still held. He looks at Ellen. "I was late," he says, "but I kept the route." Hale nods and asks if they can see the library next. Daniel agrees, on the condition they walk and keep the day quiet. They walk to the library, a calm building with long windows and a clock that runs a little fast. Inside, the light is soft and the air smells of paper. A gray locker sits near the reading room. Daniel feeds a coin and turns the key. The door opens on a canvas pouch, a neat envelope marked with 2 letters, E.W., a small square photo cut from a print, and a folded list. He sets the pouch on a table by the window and asks Ellen to open the envelope. The note is short and clear. "If you find this, I kept the doors. Field, creek, station. Do not be loud. Tap twice. I am coming by steps." The photo shows a shoulder in a school jersey, the same color as the corner from the tin. The list is simple. Places with rules, names to trust, words to use when tired. The librarian, Mrs. Keene, says Daniel sat here some mornings, counted breaths, read the map on the wall, and left a small paper triangle on the ledge. "Books wait," he says, calm for the first time. "I chose a place that waits." They plan the next move at the window. Hale suggests a small room at the substation where no one will crowd the door. Daniel agrees if it stays quiet. On the walk, he speaks plain. Years ago, he left after a hard night and woke far from home. Shame made the days long. He worked cash jobs, kept off lists, and held to places with rules. He saw Ellen once across a store and could not step forward. He kept the ring to remind him a turn back was due. "I made a route so I could practice coming home," he says. At the substation, the clerk guides them to a spare office with a desk and 2 chairs. No forms yet. No noise. Daniel asks for paper and writes in slow lines. "I left. I worked. I feared lists. I kept the doors. I am ready to be known." He looks at Ellen. "One quiet night at home," he asks. "Then we do the rest." Hale nods. They will file tomorrow. Daniel folds a page corner into a triangle and sets it on the sill, a small, steady mark to note the day. Hale steps into the hall to make a quiet call while Priya waits by the door. In the small office, Ellen and Daniel sit close but not touching. He asks what tomorrow brings. "We file the basics," Hale says when he returns. "No crowd, no rush. Then we plan the rest." Daniel nods once. Maya comes by with a plain envelope. Inside are 2 still frames and a short note that the clip is sealed and kept off public screens. No speeches, just calm steps. A young officer mentions a car that has been idling outside too long. Hale looks through the blinds and sees a person in the driver's seat holding a phone low. He does not want a scene. He suggests they use the back stairs and the library path to reach Ellen's car. Daniel stands, then hesitates at the door. Ellen taps the wood twice with her ring. He answers with the same tap, a small test of trust. They take the stairs, move along a quiet wall, and slip into the side lot where light sits soft on a row of trees. Ellen's house is small and orderly. A few framed photos sit on a shelf, edges even. Daniel studies each one, taking his time, then looks away before it hurts. Ellen warms soup and sets 3 bowls on the table. Daniel eats slowly, counting breaths between spoons, tapping his ring once on the rim when he needs to steady himself. He says he left after a hard night and took a ride that led him far. He worked where no one asked for names. "I am sorry for the empty days," he says. Ellen keeps her voice level. "We start with sleep," she answers. "In the morning we file, then we walk a little, then we call the doctor if you agree." Hale leaves a card and says he will circle the block for a while. In the living room, Daniel sets a small paper triangle on the mantel. "For the morning," he says. He chooses the couch by the window and keeps his shoes on. Ellen sits in a chair across from him and listens to his breathing settle. Outside, a car passes and the street goes quiet. Hale circles the block until the street thins. A dark sedan idles under a tree. A camera rests on the passenger seat. He taps the window once, shows his badge, and asks the driver to lower it. The man says he heard an old missing person case moved and wanted a look. No press tag, just a phone with a long lens. Hale keeps his voice low. "A family is trying to sleep. There will be a time for questions, not tonight." The man shrugs and says someone at a desk mentioned a sealed clip. That word should not be outside. Hale notes the plate, thanks him, and watches the taillights fade. He texts Priya to check who touched the file and to keep the list short. On the porch, a neat paper triangle sits under the mat. Daniel must have set it before lying down, a way to mark the door as safe. Hale locks the gate and sits with the quiet, counting slow breaths, letting the street settle before he leaves. Morning is pale and still. Daniel wakes early, shoes on, hands steady. He folds a scrap into a small triangle and leaves it on the mantel. They walk to the substation by side streets. A few faces glance up and look away. The clerk leads them to the same small room. Daniel speaks in short, clear lines for the record. He left, he worked, he kept to places with rules. He is ready to be known. He signs. The captain steps in and says, "One thing needs air." A young officer stands at the door, eyes down. He says he took the cruiser out for a few minutes before dawn and did not log it. He parked by the warehouse to take a call, saw a man lean to the passenger window, froze, and drove back. The camera saved those seconds on its own when a face filled the frame. He was afraid to own it. He is sorry for the noise it caused. Daniel taps his ring once and says, "Calm." Then it was me. I wanted the car to remember. Silence hangs after the officer speaks. The captain thanks him for telling it straight and sends him to wait. Ellen looks at Daniel. He says he did not want the kid in trouble. He only wanted the car to remember. The captain nods and says they will handle the rule break. But today, the priority is Daniel's peace. They set a plan in plain steps. A quiet lunch, a short rest, then a checkup at a clinic that can see him through a side door. No cameras, no bold voices. Priya slips in with a list from the file room. One terminal showed the clip for a few seconds. Then a phone call followed. Hale recognizes the plate he saw at the curb. He will speak to that man later. For now, they keep the circle small. Daniel asks what comes after the clinic. "A simple line to the public," Hale says. "You are safe with family. No details. The rest can wait." Daniel taps his ring once and says he can do that if Ellen stands with him. She nods. He folds a scrap into a small triangle and sets it by the door, a calm marker before they move. They leave by the back stairs and ride in Ellen's car to a small clinic. A nurse meets them at a side door and keeps the lights low. The doctor asks simple questions and checks what he can without pushing. Daniel eats a little, drinks water, lets the nurse note a few old scars and a new scrape on his hand. He agrees to basic tests tomorrow, not today. He says he worked cash jobs, slept in rooms above shops, moved when places grew loud, and waited in libraries when he needed quiet. He saw Ellen once across a store and could not step forward. The plan is clear: rest, food, a return visit, then a counselor if he agrees. They slip out through a service hall. 2 reporters wait at the curb. Hale gives one line: "He is safe with family. No more today." A voice calls Daniel's name. He looks to Ellen. She taps twice on the car roof. He gets in without a word. On his knee, he flattens the small triangle and slides it into his pocket. "I can do the rest in steps," he says, and the day holds. Back at the house, the day softens. Ellen makes toast and tea. Daniel sits by the window and watches the street like a slow tide. He says the triangles were a way to hold still. Folding gave him a rule when words would not come. The ring tap meant he was ready to move again. Hale steps onto the porch to call the man with the camera. He keeps it calm. No story tonight, no doorsteps. A family is rebuilding. The man complains, then backs off. Inside, Priya drops off a plain folder with simple next steps. A quiet check at the clinic tomorrow. A short meeting with a counselor if he agrees. A line for the public that says only he is safe. Daniel nods. He opens a small pouch and sets out a few anchors on the table. The tin, the map, the spare key, the paper corner. "I will leave these here," he says, "so the morning has a shape." Ellen thanks him and folds one triangle beside the others, not as proof, just as company. Morning brings a clear plan. They will speak once and keep it short. At the substation, the captain stands with Hale and Priya on a quiet step. Ellen and Daniel stand a pace back. The captain says the family asks for privacy, that Daniel is safe, and that more will come in time. No questions today. A few voices call out, then fade. Daniel looks toward the bus stands and the old path that led him home. He asks for one stop before they go. Hale drives to the warehouse road. The fence glints. The lot is still. Daniel steps to the passenger side of the parked cruiser, lifts his hand, and taps the glass twice with the ring. A small, clean sound. "I close the loop," he says. He turns to Ellen. "No more hiding. Steps, not miles." On the way back, he leaves a last triangle on the station map. Edges neat, point aimed toward the field. It is not a message. It is a habit laid down, the weight set aside. The day opens like a door with a rule. They walk through, slow and sure. Back at the house, Ellen writes a short list on the fridge. Sleep, food, A short walk, clinic, no visitors. Daniel reads each line and nods. A neighbor knocks once and leaves a small pie with a note that says only "welcome." No names, no questions. Daniel sets the note under a paper triangle on the mantel. Hale stops by to check the street and brings the young officer who took the cruiser. The officer keeps his eyes down and says he is sorry. Daniel taps his ring once on the door frame and says, "Calm. It helped me leave a mark. We are fine." They keep it brief. When the house is quiet, Ellen shows Daniel his old room. The bed is made. The window sticks a little. The lamp still clicks twice before it turns. He stands in the doorway, then steps in and sits. "One rule at a time," he says. He leaves his shoes by the chair and rests with the door open, the triangle on the mantel pointing toward morning. Morning is soft and clear. They walk a small loop first, then head to the field. Daniel counts the steps from the gate to the bench and stops at the number he remembers. Kids shout on the far side, a steady sound that does not push him back. He touches the rail with his ring and does not tap. Ellen asks if the triangles need to follow him today. "Maybe not every day," he says. "I can hold the corners in my head." Hale meets them by the fence and keeps his voice low. The clinic is ready for a quiet visit after lunch. A counselor can meet them in a side room tomorrow. Daniel agrees. He takes the old map from his pocket, smooths it on the bench, and draws a small square where the house sits. "Home is a door with a rule," he says, half to himself. He folds the map once, clean and even, and slips it away. "We will go slow," he adds, "but I can tell the rest, in pieces, and stay." The clinic keeps the side door open and the lights low. A nurse greets them by name and speaks in short, calm lines. Daniel answers the basics, lets them take a small sample, breathes slow when the cuff tightens, and nods when the doctor says they can spread the tests over days. He agrees to meet a counselor tomorrow in a quiet room. He says the lists helped when words did not, and the triangles kept his hands busy so his head could rest. Ellen listens and keeps a steady look on him when his voice thins. Hale steps out to call the captain. The leak traced to a clerk who repeated a phrase to a friend. The friend called a freelancer. It will be handled without noise. Back in the room, the doctor gives a simple plan. Food, sleep, short walks, one task at a time. Daniel signs the page that says he understands. On the way out, he pauses by a map in the hall and touches the square that marks the library. "Places that wait," he says, and they head home. They walk a slow loop before lunch. Daniel names 3 corners he knows and one he forgot. When a bus sighs, he taps his ring once on the rail, then unclenches his hand and lets the sound pass. Ellen points out a store that changed signs twice since he left. He says he almost came back once, years ago, left a short note in the library, then took it back because his breath would not settle. "I kept the key so I would have to return," he adds. Hale meets them at the porch with a thin folder. Inside is a basic form to close the missing file and a simple line for the public. Daniel reads each sentence, signs, and rests his hand on the page. Neighbors leave small notes by the gate. No questions, only welcome. Priya texts that the young officer will face a quiet review but keep his badge. The captain thanks Daniel for telling the truth about the car. In the living room, Daniel sets the map on the table and draws a square for the house, then folds it once, clean and flat. Evening settles soft. They eat on the porch with the window open and the couch made up just in case. Daniel folds a small triangle, holds it, then smooths it flat and slips it into the map as if to say, "The day does not need a marker." He taps his ring twice on the table and leaves it there. Not a signal, just a habit coming to rest. Hale reviews tomorrow in plain steps. A short clinic visit, a quiet talk with the counselor, a brief line to the press that changes nothing about today. Ellen asks if he wants his old room. He nods once. "Door open," he says. "Light on." He carries the map down the hall, sets it on the desk, and places the tin beside it. "I kept the root," he tells Ellen, "and now I keep the house." She answers with a steady yes. In the doorway, he pauses, then steps inside. The lamp clicks twice before it turns. The room holds. The door stays open. Tomorrow will come in steps, and this time he plans to stay to count them.